got us to 21.
Okay.
And then everything that we've added would be additional. At the time, we were thinking, came to you all in early February to talk about fund balance, possibly putting fund balance towards this project. We've switched gears from our recommendation, from our standpoint, that we have the savings in the bond funds. And I'll say this because I'm going to talk about budget today, but bond funds can only be used on capital projects. So we can't use those for anything else. So our capital projects, I think we're going to be very successful in a lot of our bids, hopefully, as we continue. Even maybe this number, as we get to the end with the GMP, may go down too. But I think that we're to a point where we could probably do a formal recommendation at a board meeting, ask the board to revert those funds to this project.
How much money is in that account?
Well, right now I have the 75 million that we have, because depending on the projects that I have. So we're starting to build our projects, so we're starting to put those funds towards those projects. So we had set aside for this project in bond funds like 18.5, and we have the 4 million from the city. So we have 21 million right now set up with bond funds and city funds when we get them towards this project. What we needed was 6 million to do it, all the things that we wanted to do, and we were going to, our original approach was to use fund balance. Now that because of the savings from those other projects that we got everything we wanted in those projects, but the savings have come in really great that we can use those funds possibly to cover this instead of using fund balance.
Brandon, I have a question. On that deep foundation system that they discovered, was that an individual company that did that, or it was?
It has to be a third-party geotechnical service. So we use them. We have quite a few we use, and we change it up and sporadically use them just to keep everybody honest. But they're top tier, and they're third party. They don't belong. They don't work for. They work for the district.
Okay, there wasn't anyone from.
No. Yes, it has to be a third party.
No, we hired them directly.
Yeah, we hired them because at the same time we want to make sure they're the ones to go out. So everybody's waiting for that soil test from that third party group to say we kind of knew we had some issues, but we didn't know they were going to come in to that severity.
Just so the board knows that we're also having conversations with a new entity that has plans to build the apartments on the property just adjacent to the natatorium. So that project did go away, now it's back with a new entity. And we're still going to work on in that kind of green space to put in a park between the apartments that have a softer landing on the natatorium. And they seem pretty agreeable. I don't think we've gotten too far, but
correct. Well, I had an initial meeting with them. We did, and they're willing to kind of keep that space open so that, like, not put the apartment complex right up against their.
Where are they going to be? I mean,
they're going to be between our natatorium and the Chevron there. So, but they want to push it further back, and so they'll probably do some clearing and leave some of the trees up front and push it further back, so it'll be a little bit further off the highway.
So did y'all know that right away?
Well, we had an initial group before, but they dropped out. And so this is a new group, new developer that's wanting to put a multifamily type residency there.
What is the space that they have there? How much, how big is it? How large?
that's like 8 buildings. They have a two-story, three-story.
Because they could go up. I think they have 20-something acres in
Oh, that's a
it's
lot.
an apartment.
We're talking to District 4 too about, the railroad track that I'm thinking they have plans for a nice boulevard or the apartment will do. So, I mean, there's no way to really kind of enhance that area and property over there. I think what we're trying to do is make sure that the apartments don't hide the natatorium.
Correct.
And kind of a viewpoint or vantage point. So I think we're kind of open to that as well. And moving it back is probably the answer to that. So, just so you guys know that those projects are going kind of working in tandem, and lots of people. We actually looked at purchase price of the property and bring to you as consideration. Pretty top of range. We never was a recommendation.
And one more quick question, Brandon. Does it look like we have enough to cover the 6,200?
I believe so.
Yeah.
With the savings. So that, in bond funds. Bond funds. So our recommendation is going to be, we'll take the recommendation to subcommittee and then bring it probably to a formal meeting with the board to reallocate those funds, because we have, and I wanted to reiterate so everybody knows the projects that we put on this, when we went out to the public, everything that we talked about phase 3 that we told the public we're going to do, we got that plus more. And then all the elementary gyms getting HVAC plus rooftops, being able to do all that and have the savings that we have. So It's not like we're just gonna take from somebody or cut something out to make this happen. All right, so now to me. All right, budget planning, it seems I'm gonna just start off by saying, years back, we had our first year with me, we had our trials and errors working through, getting through budget, and it was my first year, and then we had a year, we did a TRE, and working through budget to do that, and then we went through House Bill 3 last year, and not kind of knowing and trying to wait and seeing, and we find ourselves in a situation where there's a lot to be said on waiting and seeing what's going to happen and trying to predict an environment that's changing and is very fluid. And so I'm going to kind of hit highlights because I only got 10 minutes. There's a budget calendar on there, so I put that on there for your reference to know what some key dates are for us. There's some changes that have happened in House Bill 3 where this TDA is actually going to set our tax rate for us, and then I have to bring it for adoption. So that's a change from House Bill 3. Normally, I worked on our tax rate, looked at our values, and then we brought that as a recommendation. And I'm talking about M&O side only. So on the maintenance and effort side, they are compressing us again, which means they're going to lower it. And at the same time, they are going to set it through our property values. I just received preliminary values, and I'm going to go through those for us. But there is some concerns about the future of the tax rate and the next session, because they have a law now that compressed us down. Well, if the next session comes into place and they change some of the funding mechanism they put into place, they leave districts with a lower tax rate and less funding. Our only recourse to gain funds back is to raise taxes if we need to cut at the state level. So when you get compressed, the law says for you to raise your M&O rate, you have to do a TRE. And so those are things that we have to keep in mind and move down the road that might be an issue that we need to face, and I'm going to cover some of that. So for business and finance, we're going through staffing this week with all our campuses. I will share with you that for the most campuses, our enrollments, especially our elementary levels, have gone down over the years, and so staffing, there's not a lot of teachers being added to our campus and not a lot of positions. We're actually looking to try to, through attrition and also moving people around, fill some of the voids where we do have campuses. So for the majority of our campuses, there's not a demand for extra teachers at this point. We had our demographic study come in, a preliminary draft, so I have some information for you on page 5. You're seeing that we have bounced back. We were trending upwards in 2015 to 2016 to a total of 13,891. This is our snapshot data on October of total enrollment. And then from about 2016, we saw a steady decline. It's like less than 1%, but it's something that we hadn't faced before. Well, we bounced back a little bit this year, so we're not quite where we were in 2016, but we are on the trend upward. And so I wanted to mention that we are number 7 in the city as far as the size of our district, 13,000 students. We are ranked number 7, so that's pretty neat to have.
We have 2 spots.
2 spots. Well, we were behind Hardendale recently, and then and a couple of years ago, we were kind of similar to where East Central was, but we passed Hardendale as far as enrollment. And so we've had about a 1% decline. This graph kind of shows that. The key I wanted to show here on page 8, if you notice page 8, it gives you the demographics per year. So in 2013, actually 2015, we had over 6,200 students in elementary. Currently, we have 5,700, so we know exactly where our enrollment is declining. So we have 574 less students in elementary now than we had back in 2015. And so that trend is going to continue. And this next page, page 9, which is the telltale we have to be ready for over the next 3 years, is our cohorts of the red cohorts where we were trending almost every grade level over 1,000 students. If you look at our early elementary levels, those have changed to 800 to 900. So those cohorts are going to start to push through those lower numbers into our middle school and then possibly in the future in our high school. And so over the next 3 years, I would predict that we will see a lower enrollment until our neighborhoods really explode. They are helping us right now maintain that. And I will say, because I talked to demographic, we were having issues and they were seeing slowdown in the market on housing. And so, but they think that's changing. So we had over 500 and something houses sold, first brand new homes in our district, and we were trending about 280 in the past. So 500 this last year was great. And some of the neighborhoods though are different, and that'll be next month, I'll bring that study, but we're seeing less kids come out of the new homes. So we don't know if there's a lot of new families with young ones yet. So I think over the next 3 years, our trend data is going to push, those cohorts are going to push into our middle schools and see where right now we have classes of 1,000, we're going to start having classes of 900 and 800. So this is going to be across the board. If you look at pre-K, we got 837 pre-K, which is our highest ever. So that was part of bringing our pre-K for all back. Hopefully those numbers help sustain, and then we start getting kindergarten classes of again of 1,000 and so forth with our housing and with this. This page here, page 10, shows you where we're losing our students. They're transferring out. We have 1,745 students transferred out. In 2015, we only had 600. And so we have a huge population leaving. And we know that idea there, I don't know why it's off there, but 882 back in 2015-16, there was only 66 students going to idea. We have over 800 students now attending those schools.
Brandon, that's not kids that came and then left though, right?
Those are kids, this data shows kids that are living in our district right now and go to a different school. So it doesn't mean they ever showed up here, but if it's a fifth grader, they might have left, because this data is only 4 years old. 4 years ago, we were only having 140 kids. This data just kind of shows the trend, and that's kind of the things that we're doing to try to mitigate that with, communication, plans, and getting out there to the public and doing the things we're doing. But we will have this problem. Their schools are here, and we will have to continue to figure out a way to mitigate it and keep our kids.
And it looks like they come back in high school, right?
Correct. And so we kind of see that trend data in middle school and high school, and that's why you see our cohorts in our elementary is what's hurting us. And so then if they come back, that's great. But we have to kind of figure out as far as enrollment. I mean, when you're dealing with budget, I look at overall enrollment in 88s. Where it's at, I mean, I'm going to move the resources where it's at, but if it hurts when it's in elementary, because elementary kids tend to come to school more, so our 88 is actually better. So when you're higher kids, the more your kids are in high school, those kids tend to be in school less. And so, moving on, some things, and I don't have a lot of data for you, but I do have some things to think about, and I want to share with you that back in January, February, I started doing revenue. Our revenue was trending pretty closely to what I was predicting. But now with COVID, we're not sure how it's going to impact enrollment starting in the school year. We don't know how it's going to affect ADA if we have another outbreak, or if we don't close down, or if we have to go to remote. So I started this year's budget trying to trend towards the ADA that we have currently, kind of close to that, stay status quo, because I don't see a spike in enrollment or decrease this year. We actually were a little better. So I'm going to run some scenarios that show that status quo is try to go with what we predicted originally, but also have some backup plans. I don't know what we're going to, as we go through this, I'll work with you on budget to say, well, what do you think, or I'm going to give you some recommendations, and working with senior staff is, what does it look like if we lost 125 students because COVID, they left our system, our work that started to go homeschool, or, yes, sir.
I was worried that I missed something really important when I fell asleep. Couldn't go. Oh,
Sorry, sir.
yeah. No, the question is,
Me up snoring.
how do you determine the ADA when they're not coming to school?
That's the ADA. That's my problem right now. I have four 6 weeks of ADA. So normally the way we work is we look at our trend data. I look at the last 5 years, and I look at every 6 weeks, and I can determine how that trend works, and then we try to make a prediction. And sometimes we're really good at it. Sometimes we have a flu outbreak, and it really hurts us. So this is untreaded waters, I would say. We pretty much will lose the second part of our school year's trend data for all our, not only ADA, but special ed, weighted funding, bilingual weighted funding, comp ed weighted funding. And so really a lot of school districts, we're having this conversation. We meet every Monday with the CFOs across the San Antonio area, trying to come up with a plan. And so that's why I want to run different scenarios. So to give the board, and what happened
You
is,
could have said, well, let's just use what we did before it started. Or you could say, let's do everyone that we had contact with during the remote period.
correct, absolutely. That's it.
So I think you got most of those kids are read somewhere where there were some you never found,
Yeah.
never returned, but I think most of them, one way or another.
And that's why I went to 3%, because I think we're less than 300 kids that we can't find. I think it's lower than that. I don't remember the exact number. So I mean, at 3% is my high end that we might lose 375 kids that don't come back because we can't find them, or they're out of state, or they left and went to move somewhere else with family members, or chose a different venue for schooling because they're afraid still.
So you're saying there's some right now that we can't find that are not reporting as far as
Correct.
the distance learning?
Correct. And our numbers are actually really great compared to our counterparts across the area that are, can't find a lot of students.
Just on the side, just to say this, talk to a whole lot of schools about what they're doing on the distance learning. Nobody's doing better than we. We just do a tremendous job on our remote learning.
And so I'm gonna go move forward on, so that's ADA. So we have a predicament that we need to work through to try to figure out what that trend data is gonna look like, what we should conservatively budget for on ADA, because that's a big driver of our funding. On the INS side, what we face is that our property values came in at 8%. So we had 8% growth this year. So we're over $4 billion on our property value, which is really good. I mentioned before that the state is still putting in another mechanism to compress our M&O side. So we're going to get a compression, but that will be made up by state aid. So that's why they're doing that. On the INS side, what I'm a little nervous about, I wanted to be upfront with you all, is our collection rate. I usually budget about a 99% collection rate every month when I do the tax rate. Ask me where our tax rate is. That's very important because that's our revenue. So if we have a 4% loss on our collection rate, I mean, that's $2 billion. You're talking $56 million at a 4% loss. And so that's a part where I'm real nervous, especially on the INS side, to make our debt payment. So we may have to use fund balance until we get through this. And the data for collection rate is even worse than the ADA. I don't say probably not, because we collected most of our taxes already. So I don't have any data to show if people aren't paying their taxes. We do have some funds left, and I'm going to watch those funds and see. But most of those funds are already delinquent, so those people weren't really paying on time anyways. But that's another piece that we normally budget in our budget 99% collection rate, because we don't get all our taxes. So it can't be within the whole budget of all 56 million. I'd usually knock it down a percent, half a percent, to know that that's our trend data, because we have 5 years of trend data on not what we collect. So for budget assumption, just so you know what I'm looking at, looking at potentially lower enrollment, trying to just navigate that. Does that mean my time's up? It's quick 10 minutes. Well, I'm gonna go quick and I'll finish. We got our values. TA will set our tax rate. I'm gonna jump to here. We do have some expenses I wanted to share with you now. We have our cohort of junior class at CAST that we need to add teachers for that program. We have the Autism Academy that was grant funded, that went off the books. That grant's gonna go away, so we are going to continue that, and so we're gonna find ways to fund that. But that may be a locally generated group that we have to fund. We have some special education issues that we need to include some teachers because of the amount of students we have in special ed. We need to add some special ed staff, and there's some miscellaneous. So really, going into this back in January, we were looking to add 1.7 to the budget next year. We have room based on the normal projection I had back in January and February. But we are going to go through these, and we're going to do some other things I'm going to share real quick to kind of mitigate this and help with next year's budget. So you know, in the next biennium happens next January. Current unemployment in Texas is at 7%, over 7%, continue to rise. And it'll be at 10 soon, and it'll be the highest it's been in I don't remember when. The state budget, our budget is the state Texas budget is a lot of it is funded by sales tax, which sales tax is taking a huge hit right now. The oil industry, who helped mitigate the 2009 financial crisis. In the 2009 financial crisis with the housing and the banks in Texas, oil and gas was strong, and so that really helped get Texas through that time. Well, we know oil and gas is, I don't want to say collapsed, but it's on the brink.
Yes.
And then in that 2011, 2012 biennium, after all that happened in the crisis, they came in and they cut state funding to education by $5 billion in 2011, 2012. And I don't know if you remember that, but it was huge cuts. But then they required us to all still do all these programs. So we're going to have to get prepared for that. That's what part of my job and senior staff and all of us talking about how do we get to that time. That's not next year. Next year, I was talking about next year's possible funding loss. But when the state comes together and they start talking about potential cuts because of their budget, we need to be prepared to look at programming, to look at things. So just for next year, this is not a recommendation for now, but this is something I want to start telling y'all that we probably need to look at just for next year's budget. We're going to look at a hiring freeze, only replacing essential people. So if we lose a core English teacher, we're going to replace that person. If it's a person in central office or a certain area, we can look at reducing them to attrition, we will, and not rehire them. We're going to look at our high schools right now, and this is not just driven by budget, but it's a big part of it. Part of the 5-period day was that it's a huge budget expense for staffing. And so we're recommending moving them back to a 7-period day to help with the staffing piece in that model. And then we're not saying no salary increase right now, but as we walk through this, it's pretty evident that if we add salaries next year and say we can work it through our budget, sooner or later we're going to run into that wall like in 2021, 2022 when they cut our budgets and we had high salaries. And so as we're working through the superintendents in Durham County to not be in competition with each other over funding and over salaries, a lot of us are trying to look at maybe not getting something next year and waiting and seeing how it turns out and then go from there. So these are just things to prepare for next year. Now, 3 to 5 year plan? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do you have any guess as to what the number of the attrition will be?
Well, not for next year at this point. What we still have to do is sit down because we've been trying to navigate COVID and just figure out how we're going to get through this year. But we'll probably sit down and look at positions, by divisions. And if we lose somebody, we obviously don't want people to lose their jobs because it's hard to find a job right now. But if we lost one, I know all of us can look at possibly looking at if that person left, we would not replace that. And then until a point where we have to. Like if the next session comes in.
9-13%.
Yeah.
Our mobility rate. So what Brandon's talking about, the historically bad economic times, when the economics really takes a bad turn, people stay put. So we do not expect it to be that high. And that's everywhere. There's probably half of that, so about 5%. But I would expect to see folks.
Yeah. About 10% would be pretty drastic, it would seem, in terms of keeping all the students with a good teacher.
Which equates to about 50, 60 people, I would expect. Either move out of state, move to another geographical, retire out, probably. And Brady would say they're not, and Joanne would say they don't fall in the right areas where you need them to fall either. So there's something you can do through attrition. The thing we have on our side is time. Because it's not going to be so bad this coming year. It's really going to get bad a couple of years after that.
That's why I appreciate. Let's not really add anything, and then when we can work through attrition now, let's try to mitigate. Because if you do whatever you can do now, will help the hurt when we actually have to do it. Right? So if we can work through those things now, and that's where salaries, because we are very competitive, and if nobody else does, we're just as competitive as everybody else. And then if we can look and start building some areas where we can potentially look at cut to attrition as time goes on. Because that's sooner or later, based on Hagar and all the people coming out, that it's between 8 to 15% at least the state economy's budget's going to get cut. And we'll feel the direct impact of that, and that's billions of dollars.
I kind of heard that's what other districts have been discussing from other board members. But right now it's at a point where they don't really know.
We're telling you this because me and Dr. V talked to all the superintendents. We're on their calls. I'm on the call with CFOs, and we're all just discussing on strategies because there's some. I wasn't here in 2009, and I didn't go through the crisis, but I know Bill did. And so we're tapping into people that are actually part of that and just seeing how that plays out next week.
My question is that, so last year when we did salaries, our professionals did very well with the salary increases. And I remember at the time that there was some conversation around the fact that we were going to do really well by our professionals last year, and then that this year we would really focus a little bit more of an increase on the paraprofessionals to kind of bring them up. Are we still are we going to continue that? I mean, are we going to continue that thought to finish out what we started last year?
Well, we did do something, we didn't do theirs smaller, yeah, it wasn't, so what happened is the House bill required us to do more
Right.
professionals.
Right.
They did not give us any extra funding for other staff. And so we've kind of maintained, I know we had some years off, but we tried to do something that was similar to what we've done in the past. Right now, based on the unknown, I wouldn't recommend us doing a whole lot for anyone at this point. I'm not saying it's off the table, but based on just next year's budget, and I think we need to wait until January to see what, through the biennium, what they're going to do to us.
So you're talking this freeze for this year then?
Yeah,
The
starting.
freeze is this year,
So-
not
Starting like, right
this
now,
budget.
this budget that we're going to do, and I'm putting together right now, freezing salaries, freezing adding staff, because we've already done that for 2019, 2020. I'm talking about 2020, 2021. Yeah, so this is preparing us next year for the following year of the impact of the following year. We can mitigate some of that, because what happens is if we add a bunch of salaries, but then they cut us, then either we're dropping salaries again, or we're gonna end up cutting people. So the less salaries we add to that budget, maybe we keep more employees on.
In that line too, since the summer, we've talked about doing a market analysis of all of our pay scale compensation structures and using TASB. That's what we did last year, and I say we continue doing that so that we can bring you some very distinct information, so you know what the market looks like and the categories of employees and see where we are.
We actually
We
started that.
actually have already done that.
Well, we started the process and they got through it and they were supposed to, we didn't, and then COVID hit, so we probably need to
So we
circle
don't
back.
have-
Maybe bring that
Results.
information to the board.
So I'm gonna finish with this. Oh, go ahead, sir.
One more question.
You're gonna answer, go ahead. Go ahead, you got it. He's running me off.
But when you say freeze, technically that means there's no net increase or decrease,
Correct.
as opposed to saying, we're not gonna replace anybody. Because you may replace people, but what you're trying to do is not have a net increase or decrease.
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what I say. And then we're gonna really look at, and I'll take that back a little bit, yes. But if there's a situation where we maybe feel like there wasn't a return on investment on a position and we can go ahead and cut now, because that person left and we don't feel like we need to replace them, we probably would do that. And I would advise that just so that we can start preparing those spaces. For campuses, when we're talking about a core teacher, unless they are on the books and their models supposed to lose that person, we would replace them. Yes, sir. The last part, and I'm going to finish here. I want to form a committee for us and do our continuity plan for business, and really come up with a 3 to 5 year plan and start working on this to deal with the impact of the next legislative session, and anticipating even a 5% cut of a $150 million budget is going to be significant. And so I will ask the board, or recommend to the board, that we look at preserving fund balance and be prepared for the next 3 years, that we could possibly, we're going to mitigate these costs, but if our revenue gets hit by ADA and it gets hit by tax collections, we could have a deficit budget. And I want to make sure that it's worst case scenario, but I want to make sure that we understand that fund balance is there and we've been using it, and I'm all for projects and adding when we have it healthy, but really right now the state's is using theirs and they're not going to after a while. And so as we mitigate and try to figure out how to plan this out, there may be years where we're not ready and we still have staff and we don't want to rip people. And we still work through those attrition. So the last part is really looking at our fund balance. And we do have a healthy one. And we're at 68 million. And then if everything that we've already approved played out, we would be about 60 million. And so that's kind of my last piece. Yes, ma'am.
The projects that we've already approved, that we're gonna come out of fund balance, are there any of them that we can look at again and say, maybe we hold off on those?
The only thing that's not approved up there,
I'm saying if we've already approved them.
oh, you already approved?
If we've already approved them and haven't started.
Okay, the only thing that we haven't started on that is the fine arts purchases. That was a 3 year, 3 million commitment, and then we haven't started Cosmo upgrades yet. The rest of it, the natatorium is going to be a fund balance item up there that I showed you, but that's our coverage for the city. We put it up front and the city pays us back. The rest of those projects we've already done. We already bought the buses, they're already here, but we're getting reimbursed for that. Children's already in, pony field, lighting, all that's already started. Really, we haven't added any fund balancing of those other projects because the prices came in low.
I don't like the idea of having to cut anything in the classroom, so that's like our question. I mean, the fine arts, they really badly need those things.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it.
Yeah, those are the only projects that.
Yeah, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
because if we, but, I mean, I don't know, like we've been talking about some tracks somewhere.
Yeah,
Stuff like that,
yeah.
I mean, I know that we want to have them and that they're fantastic, but there might be some things that we have to look at and say, you know what, although we'd love to do that right now, we just really need to do a little more.
And I would, for bond funds, because that's a bond project, and if they were over budget, we possibly have to use fund balance. I think we did our other projects, and if we have savings and bonds, we move those to those projects, and then if we can't find any savings, then maybe we.
I mean, if
sell
it's
that.
bond funds, we have to use.
Yeah.
And that's
I'm
what I'm
talking about other,
Yeah.
I know that, but I'm just saying,
Correct.
things that we really
Correct.
don't have to do.
Luckily for us, phase 3, that we thought we were going to use fund balance for, that we originally put in front of y'all, didn't have to actually have savings. SCOBY, we haven't got the SCOBY's final plan yet, but we will work really hard to get it to where it should be, and then Natatorium with the great news from that. So the big impact of those big projects, $7 to $8 million that we thought we were going to spend, that's off the table now.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Brandon.
Sorry, sir. That's it, Tim.
It's our fault, we were
No,
asking
it's important
questions.
stuff, so we may go a little bit over. Our next item is House Bill 3 reading math and CCM articles, and I know we have assigned 15 minutes to that.
They're here. I believe Delila said she was sending them down.
So we have, Randy should be pulling that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Hello, everyone.
So you have the, item C, basically our reading on math and our CCM articles. I know it's 15 minutes, and I'm your timekeeper today, and
Probably not going to be that long. And from what I understand, I'm going to present on the elementary, and then I think Zelina is going to chime in on the secondary. So hello, everyone, board members. Hope everyone is doing well.
so budget will basically be part of every one of our brown bag work sessions, every one of our regular board meetings moving forward. We're good and part and parcel like Brandon normally does, and bring information to the best of his ability. I'm going to tell you there's confusion everywhere, and there's going to be guessing everywhere. Everyone's best ability and not to cut service to students. We are committed to the core of what happens in the classroom, like keeping student-teacher ratios, our effective size, and not going beyond that. One of the things you heard Brandon mention was reverting back to the 7-period day. That's a substantial cost savings for high schools. There's camps on both sides, but we really want to go back to that environment. Other folks think it creates too much non-structured time of students moving around all day. So you're going to hear both concerns, but we're going to bring that more in depth to you when we get to that part about looking at those two kind of side by side. But I think what I recall at each high school, it probably takes anywhere between 9 to 12 more full-time FTEs to do kind of the modified schedule that we have right now, the 5-period day. And so we'll be able to, through attrition, and not do without and still provide services to students. But we also want to give you some outlay of the San Antonio, what other school systems do, so you have a better kind of an idea of what it looks like where it's at.
What was the cost savings? Did you say that?
So, so the cost savings that is 7 to 10 positions per school.
Which is what?
Well, that means we won't cut them, but we haven't added them. So back when they moved to 5-period day, part of the agreement was that they wouldn't affect staffing. So like, they wouldn't need extra staff. Well, I will say that the group that was there, the principals are no longer there. So we have new principals in those schools that that are big differently, that want the extra staffing, that need the extra staffing, but we still held our ground not providing that based on, and so the model, and based on what their needs are, I don't speak for the principals, but they have agreed to it because they'd rather go back because of the staffing, because it helps them in their day. And that's why it's a budget issue, and it's going to continue to be one. But when you're talking about adding 7 per campus, 7 to 10 per campus.
I wouldn't mind hearing from the students if we could survey them. I think, a lot of times we leave them out of the conversation because these, adult conversations or adult decisions, I should say, decision-making money. But I think that we should start to really work on bringing their voices into the decision-making as stakeholders, right? So I don't know if y'all could do this, if you could do a survey and
We
see.
definitely can. I think our student advisory, superintendent advisory committee, could get half and half. Half that led, half that said, we do that. But bringing you the information so you have that to see.
Well, because that's a very specific, that group, I know you try to be diverse and stuff, but still there's specific kind of student that ends up in that. So I, would like to hear from students that are not necessarily, their voices are not necessarily heard of.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you. So with our HB3 funding, as you know, that was something that legislation just passed to be able to fund more programs in early childhood education. And so with that funding comes some expectations and goals. So part of those are those HB3 goals that we would ask input from the board on, because ultimately we would work with the board to make sure that we create some goals that we can all agree upon and that are attainable. So I'm going to start off with the early childhood literacy board goals that we came up with as a content. What we decided to do, and again, this is just item of information for you guys to be able to, or for you all to be able to provide us with some input. So we took the taper data for a baseline of 2019, and we started with what is at the means level for those students. And when you look at it, we are at a baseline of 36% on our 3rd grade STAR reading. So from there, what we did is we created 2% increments for each goal to be able to, at the end of the 5 years, come to a 47% goal. So it's not that necessarily we're shooting for a very small goal. What we're trying to do is do an attainable goal. From what we understand, this is a work in progress, and this can always come back and be changed. So based on where we would hit, where we would have gotten results for 2020, we would have gone back and modified those percentages and those goals based off that data. So we can definitely increase it to 3%, 5%, and then ultimately what the state has identified at the needs level is at a, they do a 90-60-30, so 90% is their goal for coaches, 60% for needs, and then 30% for masters. So we would be looking at that needs percentage goal to at some point be able to reach what the state has identified at 60%. So looking at the goals that we would have right now for 3rd grade in 5 years would be with those 2% increments that we would get to 40%. That's for reading. Again, using the baseline data that we have from 2019. Unfortunately, we won't have 2020 data. So when we look at the early childhood math goals for 3rd grade, using that baseline data, our 2019 3rd grade results were at 42% for meets. We also did the same thing, and we created 2% increment increases. So that way, we would get to, at the end of our 5 years, adding 53%. Again, we can always go back and adjust those if we think that those are too low, or we want to adjust them and increase a little bit. We also have to create some progress measure goals for our pre-K students. And so that information has been gathered by Dr. Escobedo and Ms. O'Toole and her team. And the data for baseline that they have used has been the goal assessment. And so when you look at their baseline data for 2020, their goal would have been 85%. So that way by the end of year 5, they would get to 91%. So they've done that also for reading and for math using that goal assessment. The hopes of these goals is so that way if we create pre-K goals, getting into kinder to 1st to 2nd to 3rd, everybody does their part, and these goals will help get all those third graders by the time they do get to third grade to that 60% state goal.
Can I ask a question on the reading, our goal for the reading? I know that our little kids use the iStation for reading, right? So I was doing the iStation with my nephew Raymond today, this morning, and it says, go as fast as you can, but do your best. Which really is kind of dumb, because I'm reading it with him, right? And I'm reading it, and then we're not even finished reading it, because then you have to click on the little box, and it says which word you want, blah, blah. You can't even finish it, and I'm 54 years old, and I'm a really good reader. So I'm like, oh, well, we didn't get that last question. And he goes, no, they don't give us enough time now, yeah. And I go, yeah, I know. So then I'm thinking, what good is iStation if they're telling him go as fast as you can and do your best?
Correct.
Some kids do not go very fast, although they can read and they can understand what they're supposed to read, but it's like you should see their little face when they don't get to the end. So I think that we're going to have to reevaluate our iStation usage, because in my opinion, it's pretty much useless. Unless you're, I don't even know unless you're what, but in the word, I mean, he's only in second grade.
Yes.
And so I don't know if we're counting on iStation to help us with our reading, but I really don't think iStation is geared towards kids to do their best. I think it's a race.
So this, so I know this can probably be a different topic agenda, but you're right on that and giving us that input. So thank you for that input, because the state themselves have identified that there's new K through second grade reading instruments. And so right now, the commissioner has put out a list of what they have approved to use in kinder, first and second grade. So what we're doing right now is we're using the rubric that they have put out. And if as a district we can decide that we want to continue using iStation, then it has to meet all the requirements that are on that rubric. So we can definitely bring back all the results after we evaluate all the instruments that the state has put out there and giving us options on what we want to decide. We hope to be able to take that to senior staff in the next 2 weeks, and then we can definitely bring it back to the board as an item of information, so we can make the best choice that's going to be aligned with us being able to meet our HB3 goals. And then also the new reading academies that we brought to you all in the past, how is all that aligning? So I think the state is making efforts to try to make sure that all that is aligned.
Just to piggyback on that, if we're going to reevaluate the iStation, then I really think that the adults need to sit down with our grade, whatever grade level we're looking at that thing for, and just see how difficult it is to maneuver. And I think I felt already for years now that the iStation is more of a, you learn it from that, so I don't have to teach it to you. And so I don't want us to sit and look at iStation as adults and say, oh, that's a fantastic program. I'd rather like Lloyd and Joanne and whoever sit down with a little second grader and watch them do that iStation. And I think you're going to find the majority of them really have a difficult time. And they're really either guessing and they're not learning. And then we're testing them on what they're supposed to have learned on the iStation. And no wonder they don't do well on the literacy test.
Yeah, and I think curriculum instruction, so I've worked with the team around that work. And iStation was never intended to be used as the reading program for Southwest ISD. It's an intervention module, right? And there's been a real intentional focus by Dalila and her team in the last couple of years around putting things into place to support kids so that they actually learn how to read. That is very different from iStation. And so now that the commissioner has come out with new programs that are going to be approved, it gives us some autonomy on and some flexibility on what we are choosing. I think that there were some good things about iStation, and obviously you've hit on some things that are not so good, but the program itself is designed for interventions, and it's based on teacher-created kits that have nothing to do with probably that you're seeing. And so I know that through our lawsuit, I worked with Velia and with a teacher at one of our campuses, and that was part of the issue, is that teachers didn't know how to use the program the way it was designed. But I do believe that curriculum's put in a huge emphasis on what we are supposed to be doing that's very different than what we've seen in our history. So I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's helpful, it's just, you know, you don't really know until you sit down and watch somebody try to use some of their stuff. It was just, you know.
True.
Do you feel that the new items that are being recommended are more sophisticated than are they better than what we've had?
Yes, so some of them are, and some of them aren't necessarily going to an online program where, like Mrs. Oakman said, you just go and sit and here you go and try to do this. It is now coming back to a lot of the face-to-face, which we had originally stated, you know, we need that in order to be able to identify what are some of the struggles or interventions that students are actually needing, right? Because clicking on a program versus you're hearing them mispronounce a word, was that at the beginning, was that at the end, was it in the middle, was it a diagram, all those kinds of things. You really need to be able to hear students and see what they're doing with their mouth when that is happening. So they are looking at, a lot of the districts that we have collaborated with are going back to using the TPRA and Texas Ley. So that is one of the options that the state is putting out there as a free resource. So again, we have kind of a task force together. We will definitely have teacher input and principal input so that way they can help us make the best decision based on the needs for their campus and their students on what are the best products that we're going to go with as long as we stay within the guidelines from TPA. And we can bring that back to you. Okay, so if you are okay with these goals, then we're going to go ahead, and what happens next after these goals for the district are approved, then we would do is take them to the campus level. Now the campus level would have to also create their own individual goals based off the district goals, so that way we make sure that we're all aligned and trying to get to the same place. Are there any questions?
I have just one quick question. So we know that parents are teaching their children at home right now, and we know that parents don't know how to teach literacy. What are we gonna do when the kids come back? Are we gonna test them, see where they're at? I don't know, what, do we have a plan for when they hit the classrooms? Because they're not gonna be where we would expect them to be at that date in time.
It's $1 million question in Texas, yeah. And it's an area we talk a lot about in our Googles with the superintendents, with curriculum folks, with teachers. We fully expect that there's going to be a lapse in learning, just based on moving from one face-to-face platform to a virtual platform. I think our teachers at Southwest are doing a good job. I think everywhere folks are really trying to. So we do synchronized opportunities, asynchronized opportunities, but at the end of the day, a lot of that does fall to the parents, and so it's going to be different. We've decided as I think a region to use the information we had from August of 2019 to March of 2020, really kind of concentrate on where students at in that time period. What happened with students during this kind of huge interruption. To move everyone. There is a USDE grant coming out that's supposed to help, that we're applying for as a state, that's really supposed to help mitigate some of the lapse that our students have by putting more money into summer program, into starting school earlier next year, into being able to take our schedule of last year, and maybe create Saturday opportunities throughout the year. But that's contingent on us coming back into a face-to-face environment as well. There is a very good chance that we could even start next year, half a year or a full year in the same environment. So what we're doing is we're trying to explore those type of programs that provide our students the best opportunity to really concentrate on literacy and not have as big of a gap. But we know we're going to experience the largest gaps in student learning from one year to the next with the most challenged budget that we've ever had. And that's going to be a challenge for all of us.
I'm really worried that, the teachers are teaching their TEKS and they stopped here in March, and then they're gonna come back potentially in September, potentially next January. And then all the TEKS in between, they're gonna get lost? They're gonna have to start over here, or are they gonna start over here?
Well, the idea is that we haven't stopped teaching TEKS.
Right, but we don't know what the kids are absorbing, what they're not absorbing. I mean, everybody's everywhere, it depends a lot on what parent, how much their parents can help them. I mean,
So Bonnie presented out this morning in our team regarding the plan for that, and Dalila is texting so I can share some information with you guys as well. So there is a plan in the event that we come back in the fall to create implement a scope and sequence at the beginning of the year that would cover some of the things that could be essential things that kids missed to be able to continue on. The other thing is they're working on spiraling teams throughout the curriculum in the following year. The major challenges come in the big transition years, right, where kids are going from 5th to 6th and from 8th to 9th. They are planning on, the state is offering to do end of year assessments or beginning of the year assessments. And Dalila has indicated at this point, and right now in our very fluid planning, is that we're going to opt to do a beginning of the year assessment because we don't want to test kids at the end of this year to get data that may not be relevant to helping them get access to better learning. And so I think that there is a plan. Brandon mentioned his business continuity plan. I'll be working on a continuity plan. Dalila's working on a continuity plan, and all of us are planning on what does the fall look like for us, and that includes what does the fall look like for our kids, because it is going to be very, very different probably than anything that we've ever experienced before. But know that, we are very much aware of the charge ahead of us and willing to put together teachers on those committees, student voice within that, because after all, it is their experience. And so, so I think they'll leave them in that.
so plans coming right now.
Yeah, and I want the board to know, Dalila's not here. She had a close family member pass away, which took her out of the country, and so she's in self-quarantine. But when you guys are speaking, there's like 18 texts going.
I know.
And so I really think that she'll be able with her team to come in and present when we know that we can assess our kids and do maybe a beginning of the year and move forward. But I mean, you're right. Our kids are probably in a most challenging position coming out of this than before. So we have to all kind of just embrace that and make sure we put a program around them and support them.
Be flexible.
I'm just going to stay and present for Celine, and I don't know if can she be heard?
Can you all hear me? Good afternoon.
She called herself.
We can mute her on one of these. She can do it. Oh, is she here?
I can present on here.
She can do it.
Yes. Good afternoon. Can you all hear
Do
me?
you need to bring up the presentation from there, or she can't see it?
She can only see what's on there.
She can only see what's on there. Can you unmute her so she can share her CCMR goals, which also came with that? These are the secondary, this is the secondary part for those goals that needed to be created.
Zelene, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm going to try to turn you up as much as I can. Sorry. Can y'all?
Okay, no problem.
Very low, actually. Go ahead. Can you talk a little bit for a second? Give me a test.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you all hear me?
Kind of, not really. So
Does that work?
if I do, I'll change. I can move her closer while she talks.
I got it right here.
Oh, you got it? Okay. Okay.
Do you want me to try it again?
Hang on a second.
There we go.
Am I good to go, Roger?
Yeah, go ahead, Celine.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Faye. Good afternoon, everybody. So Dalila did come to the board a couple of months ago to look at the process for our goals. We also looked at the baseline data for CCMR. We met with CMI staff and a mix of staff members to the academic coordinators at the high school, a high school principal, to really formulate these goals. So the first goal, the CCMR outcome goal, is looking at the criteria, and that's based on the 11 CCMR indicators, looking at AP scores of 3 or higher, earning dual credit hours, completing on-ramps, and earning college credit, and that's seen in the armed forces. Also, our special education students graduating under an advanced degree plan, and then students earning an industry-based certification. So those are some of the indicators that are being used for the CCMR goal. So we felt the baseline data was at 50, so we projected this year we would be at 54, and then we would move in increments up to 2024 to 72%. So we thought those were obtainable for district CCMR goals. The second goals that we are looking at are more rigorous than the ones we just covered because students do have to meet two of the areas. For example, if we look at the first goal, they're looking at the outcomes bonus for college ready, and students do have to meet a TSIA score on SAT, ACT, or TSI. In addition, they also have to earn an associate's degree prior to graduation or enroll in college by fall immediately after graduation. So we felt that 25% leading up to 2024 to 41% was attainable for our students. If we look at the second goal, it is really defining the CCMR outcome goal for career ready. So in order for students to meet that, they have to also have a TSIA score on SAT, ACT, TSI, and also receive an industry-based certification. So we looked at it at 2020, we set a goal of 10% and moving up to 15% for 2024. And for the last measure, it's looking at military ready. Students have to have an ASVAB passing score and then also enlist in the U.S. Armed Forces after graduation. The reason that these percentages are pretty low is because we don't have a lot of students who do enlist in the military. Our average is lower than the state. So we set it at 2% and then moving to 2024 to 6% for that third CCMR outcomes bonus. Do we have any questions from the board members?
Any further presentation? Is that you? Is that you?
No, sir, that is going to be Patty. I'm going to exit so she may speak. Thank you, board members. Thank you, senior staff.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you, everybody. Is Patty coming online?
Patty here.
I'm gonna go grab her.
Jeff on her there.
She's here.
She's coming, she's coming.
My part's a sandwich, Lloyd.
Good.
How do we move on to our presentation?
All of our.
Yeah, we'll just show the kids as best we can.
I'm glad we're having this trial run because it shows a lot of areas being improved.
This worked out pretty good.
Or at least let us know.
Yeah, it's good to have it face to face. I know, but
I was good.
technology things, I don't think,
Thanks, Jay.
then I tell you, I'll be around that. I said, I don't need to know.
I see it.
So Patty, I'm your timekeeper.
Okay.
Patty, good, Patty. I put my glasses like that and they fall.
Yeah, it is fogging up, so it is fogging up, but I can't read without them, so it would take me much more than my allotted time.
Yeah.
Patty, you can present without it, your mask if you want.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you don't have to worry.
I'm wearing my mask.
Thank you, okay. I promise I haven't been out before. How much time do I have, Dr. Bush?
You have 10 minutes, Dr. Escobedo.
Okay, well, I would take less than that.
And I've been doing a great job of keeping track.
Okay, so I'm coming to you today to bring you as an item of information our virtual summer school program. As you all know, due to COVID-19 and the cancellation of STAR testing, we will only be offering an online instruction, and our summer school program will be limited to providing students with an instructional recovery program. Because we're not together face-to-face, there are no enrichment programs being offered at this time due to the limits with an online platform and no face-to-face interactions. The only exception that we're waiting word on right now is the confirmation from Deerfoot Camp, which that is a program that we have in the summer between June and July with 3 different groups coming through. Ms. Bayetta has not yet heard back from Texas A&M whether we'll have that. It's doubtful because the students do have to be in the sleeping quarters and the cabins. We just haven't had the final confirmation. But right now, that would be the only possibility of an enrichment program. So what I'm about to show you right now, and it is very brief, it's a work in progress. The following is our virtual summer school program that was designed by our district task force committee, and that's comprised of elementary and secondary staff. We have recommendations from both Delila, Velia, and Celine. The elementary subcommittee is being led by Velia, and the secondary is being led by Celine. We have principal representatives on there from elementary and secondary, teachers, and then, of course, our CNI staff representatives. We started meeting 2 weeks ago formally as a group. We did some pre-planning prior to that. We meet every Thursday morning virtually at 10 o'clock, and then the subcommittees meet on other days of the week with the Celine and Velia. So what I itemized here was just to kind of show you what we're looking at right now. For the elementary, middle, and high school, we're all looking at teacher PD days. Keeping in mind, let me jump to the second one. We're looking at several options. Option one would be if we start traditionally afterwards in June, as we normally do following our regular calendar. What the committee had discussed and presented last Thursday was looking at June 9th through the 29th for all 3 programs. That would be 12 days. If we follow that calendar going up to the first square, we'd be looking at teacher PD on June 8th for a 6-hour period, and that would be at $80 a day for the teachers. The instructional pay rate would be $180 a day, and we were looking at a 6-hour day. So that goes across for all 3 of them for elementary, middle, and high school. Looking back to the second square with our options, the second option we're looking at is a possibility of late June. Third option is possibly early July. And then the option 4 is a possible jump start in August. We did sit in on the BCCIO meeting last week, which is their county chief instructional officers. In polling people that were present, there were about 12 other districts present. 3 of them responded back to my question. Most of them are looking at June, some possibly mid-June, early July. We are comparable in our pay rates for our teachers. They are looking at a possibility of $30 to $35 per hour for the teachers. However, with their programs, they're looking at anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. We were proposing 6 hours, and you'll see why in a moment. So for our elementary and middle school, it would be strictly a focus on reading and math for the students that lost out on their instruction during the online learning. For our high school students, it would be a focus on course credits for graduation and then TSI readiness. On all of them, the students would be selected based on a matrix that the committees have come up with based on recommendations from the teachers and principals. We're trying not to have an overabundance of students again in the online just because we know it's been difficult as we've been in the online platform. So looking at the preliminary counts and the budget, and just keeping in mind all is still very fluid because this is information we're getting back from the principals. So elementary with Beverly's group, they're looking at a possibility of 359 students with a 30-to-1 ratio. And while 30 may seem a lot, what we would do is break that down. So if the students are working, if the teachers have a 6-hour day, and let's say 30 of us are there, 3 of us might be in group 1, and we would give those students in group 1 an assigned time to be on. And then the 3 of you might be in group 2, you'd have an assigned time, and then if you're in group 3, you'd have a different assigned time, rather than trying to have all 30 at the same time. This would reduce the need to hire more teachers. Again, we're also hoping that parents will be able to commit to having their students go online rather than hiring teachers and having them sit there waiting, hoping that the students would sign on. So for elementary, we're looking at 12 teachers for 12 days at 180 per day. We're looking at, for the instructional time or the instructional days, at a budget of $25,920. For the PD, for that same group of teachers, is $960 for the PD. Middle school is looking at approximately 350 students with a 23-to-1 ratio. They just wanted a little bit smaller ratio, and then the students would rotate depending on the subjects needed. They're saying reading and math which would be the focus, but there could be a few other things depending on the students. This all only counts though for gen ed. This does not take into consideration our special ed students. Rob is working on that, and will get me some other numbers that we'll have for our meeting by Thursday. So again, we're still planning for that, it's still fluid, but for special ed, it would only be for those students that would absolutely lose ground if they were not in some type of a special program over the summer. So for middle school teachers with 14 teachers that they were projecting, we're looking at a budget of $30,240 for the instructional days, $1,120 for the PD. For the high school, we're looking at approximately 100 students with a 25-to-1 ratio. For the teachers then, we're looking at $38,880, and for their PD, $240. For the TSI, they're reporting approximately 50 students each from Southwest High School and Legacy. So we're looking at 2 teachers. That cost would be $4,320, and then for the PD, $160. So right now, for the instructional recovery program, we're looking at approximately $101,840. Other items that we're still working on with the committee would be the special ed required programs. I should have that by Thursday from Rob Robinson. We're also looking at the bilingual special language program. Those are our upcoming kinder and first. That one's going to be a little bit more challenging. We're waiting for direction and guidance from TEA, because those are our very young children. Our current pre-K going into kinder and kinder going into first. And that's the program where they generally go the whole month of June, because they're in there for 8 hours a day. And so we know that 8 hours a day to expect 4- and 5-year-olds on the computer is too much. But we do have to, because it's a federal program, we do have to offer it. We don't know that the students will necessarily be on there the entire time. So hopefully Israel Gonzalez will get some guidance from TEA on that, and then we'll be able to see how many students. Now we have stated, or the committees have stated, for any program that a student is recommended by their teacher or principal to go to, that instructional recovery would take precedence. So let's say if I'm a kinder and Dr. Faye is a first grader and they say they want her to go to instructional recovery, but she's also a bilingual student, then the instructional recovery would take precedence over the special language, because we want the focus to be on the reading and math. So the principals are still working on those numbers. Of course, we don't like to retain at any grade level, and especially with our pre-kinder and kinder and early students. So those numbers are still fluid also. I had already mentioned the Deerfoot, and then we have the migrant program also, which is a required federal program. Ms. Phelps is awaiting information from Region 20 so that we can find out what type of a program they would be willing to offer also. The last 2 years with the migrant program, we've only had 10 students between elementary and secondary. So my recommendation to Ms. Phelps is that they get 1 teacher who can then take those students, those 10 kids, half in the morning and half in the second session, rather than hiring 1 for elementary and 1 for secondary, since it would be strictly online. So we're trying to reduce the numbers, and at that point, we would also reduce the cost. Am I under 6 minutes?
Not under 6, but you're under 10.
Okay, well, good, all right.
Right on 8 minutes, right? Yeah.
Okay, I did. Okay, good job. Does anybody have any questions?
So Patty's been studying summer school for a while, and she's become an excellent professional at this. And even though we do have a plan, we definitely want to know we want it to be fluid. We're hearing some of our neighbors around us staving off the beginning of summer school until July because there's some technology fatigue that's happening everywhere, and teachers need a break, families need a break. And so we would use that time to help students who would normally been retained or didn't accrue credit to maybe keep them in school so that they do not get retained and get credit. So we're playing with some other models, modifying the model, but really good job and good information. We'll bring back a more specific plan at the regular May board meeting.
So at our next PCCIO meeting, we'll check, which will be in 2 weeks, we're going to ask the other school districts for a little bit more information to see what they're doing. We do know we're comparable in the pay rate for the teachers. We're not sure what their numbers are. So that's why we were looking at the 6-hour day for the teachers to get more students rotating through on a smaller group. We'll see what the other districts can share with us. Any questions? All right.
Thank you. So moving right along, it says coaching through distributed leadership. Family has presenter.
So I have Dr. Leslie McGowan, who will be the key presenter on this, but I decided to share this with you as a result of the questions around evaluation that came up when we were doing the waivers around continued coaching and feedback. And so Leslie is working with 2 different cohorts of principals right now on distributed leadership, and I thought it would be good for you guys to see kind of the work that we're doing in the talent pipeline. So thank you, Dr. McCollum.
Good afternoon. Currently, talent management is working on 16 work streams. And in January, if you'll recall, we launched our second cohort of distributed leadership campuses. And so these are the campuses that have joined us, along with the 3 in cohort 1, which are McNair, Bob Hope, and Sky Harbor. So the 5 additional campuses joined us in January, and we have not stopped working through current state. So initially, this is really the leadership theory that we've been working with. And if a principal shifts from being the sole principal driver on the campus to empowering teacher leaders, MCLs, teachers on their campuses, and building an instructional leadership team, then as a result of that high quality and frequent coaching and feedback, then we have data-driven planning, quality of instruction delivered by all teachers dramatically increases, impacting excellent and equitable student outcomes for all of our students. So since January, I've been working with, I have Mr. Cruz here, who is the principal of Skokie Middle School, and I've been working with him and the other principals in this cohort. And essentially, we started in January by taking their org structure, which specifically looks like this. So initially, it's a principal with their assistant principal, and the principal oversees everyone and might give a couple of people to their assistant principal. But we've been looking at and rethinking old structures to develop an aligned vision that you'll see here of distributive leadership, where the principal really does shift from being that sole driver to empowering others and driving that change on the campus. And so I asked Mr. Cruz to be here so he can walk you through the work that we've been doing together to get to a point where now we're driving change through this type of frame.
So in this work, and first of all, good afternoon, board members. Just real quick, when we started this work, as a matter of fact, when we started the fall working, what was neat is that, we're starting to see everything from 30,000 feet up in the air. And then, as Leslie was discussing, is that we get caught up with a principal having to do every single evaluation, do every single coaching for every single, for example, let's say you take 2 departments and it's like, well, you got 20 teachers. Now you're responsible for every single teacher. And the reality is that a lot of times we all know that once you leave the actual classroom to more of a leadership role, you kind of tend to not be the expert, quote unquote, with that content, especially if that's not the content that you taught, and now you're asked to oversee everybody else. So the neat thing about this is now, and especially during this quarantine time, we've been working weekly through our charter at Skokie. So if you notice, you got the blue right there where I'm there, but I do have 3 other administrators that they all specialize and they're all experts in some other content other than what I'm used to teaching or what I used to teach. And then therefore within that group, you still have an MCL, you have team leaders that are actually have the capability. Obviously, they're either strong in content, they're also build really good relationships with other staff members, with their other teachers. And lastly, they're able to coach, okay? So with those 3 criteria, then you have a teacher that it's either can take a leadership role because they're ready to lead, they're able, and they're willing to lead. So with that said, it starts breaking down more into, instead of being 30,000 feet up in the air, now you start being, you come down to 10,000, and then you come down to a few thousand, then eventually to 100 feet, and then therefore everybody can have that leadership role and they can grow together as leaders.
And so if you'll notice, when Jorge and his team began this work, you'll see some pods that are green, some pods that are yellow, some pods that are red. So they did an analysis of all of the staff, all of the current staff, and identified really who are our teachers that are very strong in content, and those are our greens. And so perhaps those teachers don't need to grow in building relationships and perhaps need to grow in coaching others. Well, they now become connectors for the administrator or the MCL to go into their classroom alongside with a teacher that perhaps is a red or a yellow and still needs further development. Now they're connecting to these teachers and going in, sitting next to the teacher and saying, do you notice how they handle classroom management? Do you notice how they're working on skills perhaps for how they teach a specific TEK? But now they have connectors and there's intentionality around coaching and driving for change. And this is manageable. Whereas before, the principal overseeing everyone, that really gets to a point where you really can't truly intentionally coach and develop others. But now he's got a pod of three administrators plus 2 MCLs that are driving change in ELAR, science, and social studies. And then Jorge's filling the gap in math because he doesn't have someone there, so he's driving the change there. So it really does become an intentional strategy on how to develop and coach others. And ultimately, we're still working through this and we're still solving for the structure that he'll implement coming next year. And the other principals are doing this work alongside him so that once 2020, 2021 school year starts, there is a development plan for every single teacher on this campus.
And it's okay if they're not ready to take on that leadership role, because it does happen. You may have a teacher that has all the qualities to be a leader and can do something bigger, better as far as what they want to do when, as far as growing. But there's times when they feel that, no, I really enjoy being in the classroom, I love being in the classroom, and that's okay, because there'll be a time when they're not ready right now, then they can probably be ready and we can still kind of provide those opportunities for them to take more on a leadership role.
Thank you. I really like how this is not hierarchical, right? So it's beautiful because, especially in teaching, right? Hierarchy is not a friend, I don't think, of the teacher, right? And this makes it a team driven. So that's really awesome.
So this is cohort 2. This has been already defined, and they're actually moving way ahead at the first cohort, which was the 4 original campuses. The big bear for Leslie and myself now is working through what the high school is in for, and understanding that this is it's going to continue to be fluid based on your personnel and where you have your talent living in your system. So.
But you're teaching the principals the skill of constantly being fluid, right? But within a framework.
Right, and empowering because a lot of times when you talk to APs, they'll say, oh, I do a lot of operational pieces and I'm not really in a classroom developing others. And so this really does build out your instructional team where it's not just the principal, it's their entire core group. Yeah.
It limits the number of folks that you supervise, which that whole thing was control.
Yeah.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm smiling with it, so that's okay. So y'all have a great day. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have another item here, that is the remote district learning guidelines?
Yeah. So we have Brian coming in. So while Leslie is getting him, Dalila and her team really built out very fast and stood up basically a remote learning environment overnight. And with that came some challenges around what should we really be expecting in our homes, and then what do we expect for teachers in their homes with their kids. And so we were really getting some complaints about, my kids, online all day long, and then or from our staff, I can't be on all day long because I have kids. So what we did was, led by Leslie, she facilitated some principals to actually develop the guidelines that Southwest ISD would use with respect to how our students are learning in this new environment and how our teachers are teaching in this environment. And so there's nothing better than developed by principals to be used by principals. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Leslie.
Thank you. So initially, as Dr. Faye had mentioned, we had a short turnaround time, so we had to put together our project plan. We identified 5 key individuals, so 3 from cohort 1 of distributive leadership, Brian from Bob Hope, Sylvia Cunez, Sky Harbor, Anitra Chris McNair, and then the 2 deans at the high school level, Amanda Wagner and Tanya Tripp Chris. And basically, they went out and researched best practices, what are other districts doing, and how can we define that for Southwest ISD. So this group worked together and they developed a draft, which then was vetted through senior staff and curriculum and instruction. And Brian is here to go over the bones of, it's not. You have the, it's not.
They have it with them, and so I have an extra copy.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so this was this is the final draft that was created by the elementary, middle, and high school level principals. And essentially, you'll notice that it really does follow what the teacher is supposed to do, when teachers are supposed to be planning, when they're supposed to be meeting, what asynchronous and synchronous learning should look like. And so Brian is here to go over the work that they did in putting this together.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly go over this. I'm on the page that starts off elementary schools. And so you can see here, we really focused on the asynchronous learning that we expect teachers to provide students on a daily basis or a weekly basis. And all we did, we wanted to provide flexibility for our teachers, for students, and for parents. That was top priority for us. So we just listed out the contents, and then we assigned what we thought the average student would work on that content per week. So here you see 30 to 40 minutes twice a week for English language arts. That's about what we would expect the average student to work on assignments for English language arts. So an hour to an hour and 20 minutes a week, just for that one subject. We did that for all the subjects. We included specials in that as well, because a lot of our kids they love the specials and they continue to love. One of the most popular classes of Bob Pope is our PE teacher. She gets on there and does a bunch of exercises, leads them through it. We've got teachers that log on just to see her class also, so really good stuff. Going down a little bit, you see those green boxes. This is where we get into the synchronous and asynchronous learning. This is more geared towards teachers. Again, we just assigned minutes. We didn't put out a schedule that said teachers have to be on from this time to this time because we know that they have kids at home also. They're struggling right now also to be full-time teachers and full-time moms and dads. So we just assigned minutes. As you can see here, we're asking for 30 minutes a day of live interaction with kids. That might be a Zoom meeting or a Google Hangouts meeting, but it's that synchronous learning, just 30 minutes a day. Synchronous learning is great. It's a great way to teach. It also has its challenges because you're expecting kids at home to log in at that specific time. So we need to have a good mix between synchronous and asynchronous. Moving on. You can see we allotted 90 minutes a day for interactive teaching. This is where a teacher might get on and push out a lesson on their Google Classroom. They may log in live just to answer questions with their students. But this is information that a student can access at any point during the day or week. So they don't have to be logged in at a specific time to access this. They can just log in at their own time. Maybe the parent of a kindergartner gets home at 5 o'clock, at 6 o'clock they want to log on, see what the lesson was, they can go there, access that, and then work on that with their kiddo. At the same time, we also want teachers to ensure that they're having conferences with students and parents still, and we are expecting them to go through meetings. We are asking them to go through PLC meetings, grade level meetings, faculty meetings. This is where a lot of our schools have facilitated best practices, shared things, teachers that are doing a great job of model lessons for other teachers. We've gotten a lot better, a lot faster by holding these meetings, so it's really important that we schedule those into the day. And then the remainder is just everything that those teachers are asked to do as their duties, as they see fit. We know they're not going to do all of these in a day, but we know we're going to hit most of these in a week, so we just clump those all up under the remaining minutes, the 270 minutes. And so in here you've got lesson planning, grading student work, providing feedback to students. And then one of the biggest things, we're asking our teachers to get online and learn this new craft. This is so new to so many of them, online learning. And so we actually, we're asking them each week to find something online, to get in there and learn new things, learn new techniques, so we can share them in meetings and get better as a campus. Just moving on quickly to the next, this is just a sample schedule that lists out what a campus might have for meetings like PLCs, campus faculty meetings. It just sort of breaks it out and lists it so you can kind of see what an average daily or weekly schedule might look like for our teachers.
And you'll notice that the middle school and high school level looks a little bit different just because they've gone into an A day and a B day, and I think Dr. Fay can speak to that as well. She worked with the high school to develop the plan. But basically, they've got 30 to 45 minute block at the middle school level for first, second, and third periods happen on A day, and then fourth, fifth, and sixth and seventh period happen on B day. They've got their live learning via virtual learning. So this is the sample schedule here. This is the one that is currently happening at McNair. So they've got all of the times that students are logging in and having access to this live synchronous learning piece. And then they also have an 8 to 4 work schedule, the daily block time of teacher prep time. They've got a leadership meeting every Monday that you can log into. You can see kind of what that looks like. Their PLCs are happening every Tuesday. They've got faculty meetings happening virtually every Wednesday. And then as you'll notice here, they also have grade level content planning by content on different days of the week as well. They've got instructional support where kids log in between this 9 and 12:30 p.m. time frame. They're accessing, their teachers are also participating in PLCs, online professional development, and then at the end of the day, they're asking teachers to call in and check in on kids and do a COVID check. And so you can log in as well, just to make sure kids are doing okay and with their wellness and the kids and families are doing okay. At the high school level, it really does follow the same plan that you saw at the middle school level. So they've got A day, which is Monday and Wednesdays, B day, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's a 90-minute block where they're holding classes, and then open tutoring on Tuesdays and Thursdays during that time frame as well. The teacher work schedule, again, teacher planning time, leadership meetings, instructional sessions, lesson planning for content, by content, department meetings, just to make sure that there's a framework for teachers to have and align with.
And so when we organized this team, we organized it not necessarily to finish out our year, but to plan for the inevitable, which means we may end up opening next year. And so they spent about 2 weeks working through this. They did follow best practice set out by TEA. So we're really proud of that work, and we feel like if we had to move into a virtual platform for next year, that this would be some really good guidelines for us so that we can open up school without having a whole lot of hiccups, even though it's not going to be best case scenario. So I want to thank Brian, who we always lean into to grow him a little bit as a different type of leader in our system. And obviously I want to thank Dr. McClellan for her work in this. And so thank you very much.
When did we put this out to the teachers?
We just approved it last Tuesday, and senior staff, we presented out to principals on Wednesday.
Okay, so the teachers may just be getting it right.
Well, I mean, the principals created it, right? This is more so for, we did have some complaining, right? That's kind of what spawned this. We did have some complaints coming in from teachers about, Principal A is requiring me to be online all day long, and then Principal B. So what this did was kind of put some structure around it to say, within these parameters as a district, this is how we will operate with our staff. And then we also wanted to do the same thing for our kids because, again, some campuses were going 7 periods a day, kids were, not. The other thing that we did is we decided to use this as our platform and our guardrails for defining what is participation and engagement mean, because we're no longer doing attendance, right? So based on this plan, But what we have seen is our participation rates starting to go up at our schools. I would say probably a standout campus for me and just looking at data is McNair. Because McNair started from the get-go doing call logs and check-ins with families. So the first report out at McNair of their participation was at 98%. Wow. And since then, they have presented out their best practices as principals. And so what that's allowed is for other principals to see. And so what we saw this week was an uptick in certain campuses with how they're getting kids engaged. And so we do have some kids that are kind of early right now, but that's not unique to Southwest ISD. But yeah, so we're really proud of the work and proud of the principals for their work. So thank you all so much.
Joanne, I think I would like to say, I had a nephew that goes to there and they just really,
Yeah.
But even all the other, I have some that go to Sun Valley and Elm Creek, maybe a day to kind of figure out how it was gonna go, like when they first came, when we didn't come back from spring break. But the teachers are just doing a phenomenal job and just really navigating the emotional part of the kids too, like making them feel safe and it's gonna be okay. And I think that they've just really, like academics can always be caught up, right? But as far as their emotional well-being and feeling like a part of something still is really neat in the speech. My nephew Raymond does speech and she's doing it with other kids at the same time, so it really helps them like feel connected still to their little friends. And so I think they're just doing great.
Yeah, we have some pretty incredible things. I think the other thing is because we're virtual, one of the silver linings is C&I gets to have really good insight into what's happening in PLCs because they can literally log on. And that's very different than what we experienced in our past. So there are some silver linings in what's happening. I don't log on because it scares people. She's in HR, what she wants. So but it's been really good. I'm just very thankful for the leadership that we have in our division and our campuses. So thank you. Thank you.
Like I said, I have a lot of nephews in a lot of districts outside of Texas, and they're not doing anything. Like what you do is phenomenal.
Well, I have to say, I have to second, our teachers, absolutely phenomenal. They accepted this challenge, and they just completely, they didn't accept the minimum. I mean, we established what we were gonna do as a campus, and then they just took off and ran with it. They had fun with it. They were creative. They weren't afraid to try things and fail. I'm so proud of them. I really am. They did a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
Thank you for the answer, Brian. Leslie, thank you.
You want an executive session?
Yes, sir.
What are your three things?
Great thing, number one, thank you guys for coming in and like your feedback after this. You can just send me, either give me a call or send me an email to you guys about our May meeting. If you want to do it on this type of platform, we'll go back to the complete virtual. So I think we have that opportunity. Also had an opportunity to get a teacher name and number from each one of our principals, and so I spent last week calling each other. They really validate a lot of what Keith was saying. They feel like they are at a place that was very progressive and ready, and they acknowledge their other teacher counterparts about everyone stepping up to the plate and going from all the things. They do miss human connectivity, and really got to hear the real struggles of young teachers who are also young mothers, fathers, and how they have to contend with the family and teaching, and now that they have these teams down, how that really has helped them. But it's really lifts your heart to talk to your teachers directly. That's where everything's happening. If you have a chance today at 5:30, Carl Dickerson will be recognized at the HEB Excellence in Education ceremony. It's virtual. Janice will send you an invite to the event that you can log on at 5:30. 4:30 on Friday, Samantha Arnold, our Southwest Legacy Teacher of the Year, is going to be recognized at the Trinity Teacher of the Year virtual program. So they're both virtual. We're sending both the invites your way, and then if you have a free time, you can log on for that. Other than that, I want to thank staff. They've done a really great job. We have a long journey ahead of us. Willing to get on that road and take this journey, and thank you guys for going along with us. There's a lot of unknowns yet.
I didn't think it was bad. I didn't think it was bad. I'm not telling you.
Oh, no, but I think we have some things to work out in technology, so I didn't know.
It's bad, it's obvious, the reason for it, not it, right?
That's all I have.
This format, yeah, it's so much better for our action discussion. There's just no matter.
Anybody have anything? I need, somebody say something?
No.
I need a motion to adjourn. Anybody?
I don't think you do, but I make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you. I don't know if I needed it.
I second.
I got a motion and a second. Flo, how do you vote? You want to vote?
Yeah.
Thank you. Diane's not here. Sylvester, you still here?
Yeah. Thank you.
She's still asleep.
Keith, you want to go home?
Can you hear me?
No, Lonnie, you want to go home?
Yes.
All right, let's go home.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Ida.
Thank you.
By the way,